It was a rainy night in November when Emma moved into her new apartment in a quiet, old building in the heart of the city. The streets were empty, slick with rain, and the faint glow of streetlights reflected off the wet pavement. Emma was exhausted from the move, but the cozy apartment promised a fresh start, new beginnings. She told herself. The first few days were surprisingly normal. The floors creaked slightly under her feet, and the radiator hummed softly, creating a kind of white noise that helped her sleep. Occasionally she heard distant sirens or the soft footsteps of neighbors returning from work. Nothing unusual, or so she thought. Then it started. A whisper. At first, she thought it was the wind brushing against the windows. But the whisper didn't feel like the wind. It carried an almost deliberate rhythm, like someone was trying to speak to her from the shadows. Emma ignored it for a few nights. She told herself it was her imagination. After all, the building was old. Noises were expected, but as the nights grew colder, the whispers became louder, clearer, and unmistakably human. They always came from the storage room at the end of the hallway, a small, dusty room that had remained locked for years before the previous tenant vanished. Emma had barely noticed it at first, but now the door called to her in a way she couldn't explain. One stormy night, her curiosity overwhelmed her fear. She grabbed a flashlight, her hands trembling, and walked toward the infamous room. Each step felt heavier than the last. The whispers grew louder with every step, forming words she almost recognized but couldn't fully understand. Her heart pounded as she reached the door. She hesitated, listening. The whispering stopped abruptly, as if it knew she was there. Taking a deep breath, she turned the knob. The door creaked open, revealing the empty room. Dust motes floated in the narrow beam of her flashlight. Boxes lined the walls, cobwebs hung in the corners, and the air was heavy, musty, almost suffocating. Nothing seemed out of place. Then she heard it again, but this time right behind her. She spun around, flashlight cutting through the darkness, but the hallway was empty. 4 days after, Emma tried to ignore the room, but the whispers followed her in the kitchen, in her bedroom, even during phone calls. Every recording she made on her phone seemed to capture the faint voice, whispering the same chilling words. Help me. Don't leave me here. Emma's sleep became restless. Nightmares haunted her dreams, mixing with the reality of the whispers. Sometimes she woke to the feeling of being watched, a cold draft brushing her face despite the heater being on. Shadows in the corner of her room seemed to shift when she blinked, vanishing when she turned her head fully. Terrified but determined, Emma decided to investigate the building's history. She spoke with the elderly building manager, a man with deep lines on his face and tired eyes. When she mentioned the storage room, he went silent for a moment, as if weighing how much to reveal. That room, he said finally, belonged to a young woman who disappeared one night. She was never found. They say her voice lingers in the building, trapped, waiting to be heard. Emma's blood ran cold. Every whisper, every chilling murmur was tied to a real person, someone who had vanished decades ago. One night, desperate to prove to herself that she wasn't imagining things, she set up her camera in the hallway, aiming it at the storage room. She recorded the night, hoping to capture nothing more than silence. But when she reviewed the footage the next morning, she froze. In the corner of the video, a shadowy figure appeared, barely visible, crouching by the door. It moved slowly, its form shimmering as if between this world and another. Then it stood upright, and for a brief moment, it looked directly at the camera, its mouth opening in a silent plea. Emma couldn't take it anymore. She packed her belongings the next day and left the building, never to return. Neighbors later told stories of strange occurrences, faint knocks on doors, whispers through empty hallways, shadows darting across walls in the middle of the night. Some even claimed to hear Emma's voice echoing back, calling for the lost woman in the storage room. Years later, people still warn newcomers not to approach the abandoned room. And if the wind howls just right, when the streets are empty and the city sleeps, some swear they can hear a faint whisper coming from the storage room, begging, pleading, never forgotten.